Joyful Danish. Stay human. Is it even still possible to stay human? Maybe. It's not too late.
All right, perfect. Welcome to the show, Joyful Danish podcast, How to Stay Human in Tech. And I'm a psychotherapist. I help to improve people in the crypto space. Not many people talk about it, and I wanted to spread more awareness about it. And that's also why I invited different people to actually talk about being in Web3 and Web2, but in general being in tech and how we maybe can improve, our overall health. And my guest today is actually Benjamin Ben Hattar, and he's a founder and CTO at Shockwaves. Welcome to the show, Benjamin. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure. And it is, we met at the NFC in Lisbon. And I remember when I first saw your booth, because you were standing there with the Telegram, Ton, their new game, Battleground. And I was thinking, yeah, that's actually interesting, because when you think about like gaming in general, it does seem like that it actually can support people sometimes, or be like a venting area, or to some degree be a tool for some people to process different stuff. Have you used gaming when it comes to your health and self-care routine in any way?
Yes, I think for me it's something that I enjoy doing, and it's kind of for me playing a game is something I usually do. It's kind of for myself. It's a really good way to relax and to really not think about important stuff, maybe like work, etc., stressful things. It's also good to kind of decompress a little bit. And I feel for me gaming is really a good way. It's a really good way to do that, and it's also a good way to kind of bond with friends and colleagues, to kind of do some games together. I'm not really a hardcore gamer. I don't really try to compete that much. I'm just kind of enjoying the moment and doing some of it for, to decompress and feel a bit better.
And do you still do that? Because since now you're working full time, right? At the Ton
yes,
Gaming.
Yes. For Ton Battleground, it's like kind of all day. I'm pretty much, since I'm like one of the main developer of it, I'm kind of spending pretty much all my time developing games, and so it's I still do enjoy playing. And for me, it's also, even for my job, it's kind of important to know what other people are doing and kind of understand other products. So for me, it's kind of a way to not feel bad about relaxing, because I still enjoy playing games, but now I can tell myself that it's part of my work or something like that. So I can, I still enjoy playing games. I don't necessarily play the same games as I used to. I was more into kind of sort of intense game, like kind of Call of Duty or Counter-Strike, games like that were a bit more intense. Now I play a bit more on mobile. Sometimes I play games that are a little bit less, a bit more relaxed than I used to. So for me, my habits changed a bit, but it's still something that I enjoy doing, and still try to, between family time and work, etc., I still try to have like 1 hour here and there.
Yeah, because has your use case of how you use gaming today, has that changed? Like maybe when you were younger, did you use gaming in a different way? Like, for example, I remember when I was younger, I very much used like Diablo or like other kind of games like that, and then usually had an audiobook in the background to listen to, and that was like a nice way to like get new information or processing different stuff. So like different self-development books, I used to actually listen a lot while just gaming something that was like kind of endless, but it was enjoyable to some degree. Yeah.
Often, I think right now most of the time when I'm playing games, I'm also doing something else. Sometimes I'm just listening to either some podcast, or sometimes it's just entertaining, but also sometimes I'm like watching courses like on like Coursera, trying to learn things at the same time. And yeah, for me, it's kind of a good way to keep myself busy and do something with relaxing at the same time as I listen to something. Because like watching some online courses, it can be a little bit, a little bit boring if you're not doing something at the same time. At least for me.
Right.
So it's something, I enjoy doing, and it's good for. I think it's good to relax, and it's good for productivity. So yeah.
Right. And are there something that you then will see that there are some challenges or like awareness areas people should be aware of when it comes to gaming, in your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's. I feel like maybe sometimes in the media it's seen quite negatively, like the gaming itself. I don't think it's too bad, but like any activity, it's not perfect neither. I mean, there is always some, you can really abuse it in some ways, and sometimes it can have like especially for like younger people, there are kind of different things that you need to be a little bit aware of. Like, I mean, there's on one side there's maybe like some content that is not necessarily for every age, and I think parents should be kind of aware of that. But also, I feel like sometimes monetization in some games can be a little bit too aggressive and get people to spend crazy amounts, and it's not necessarily. In some ways, it can be completely fine. I mean, if you want to spend $10 for a skin in a game, I don't think it's problematic in any way. It's like buying a coffee or a burger or whatever. It's not. I don't think there's anything really bad about this. But in some cases, it can be a bit. It can have negative effects. So it's maybe not for everybody. There's sometimes some gambling aspects to games that can be kind of problematic depending on the age or the person that is targeted. So I feel like it's good to keep these things in mind and try to be a bit cool-minded when you're playing yourself or when your kids are playing, just to have an idea of what's going on, and just having a little bit, thinking not to fall into something that is maybe a little bit not very healthy. I don't know whether it's on the monetization or the type of game or anything like that. I don't think it's a dangerous activity in itself, but there are always a few aspects that can be problematic.
And there's some areas that you maybe have experienced yourself that maybe you feel like that's a little bit overlooked. That some areas are more common sense. That okay, sure, gambling and whatnot, as you say. But are there some hidden enemies you might say that
Yeah, I mean,
can
there's
be?
always it's like in different. I think especially in mobile apps, there tend to be a few things that can be a little bit, like subscriptions that don't cancel and stuff like that. It's not really terrible things, but it's kind of bad business practice, I would say. And there are a few things that can be a bit, problematic. And I feel it's more about who you're targeting and who's actually using your game. That is kind of that makes the difference, because some stuff like loot boxes, it might be, I think it's perfectly fine for anyone, any adults. In some cases, like games like Counter-Strike, where people actually did casinos with skins from Counter-Strike, where people could kind of gamble on it. And usually it was like young people. It was kind of a way to gamble when you don't even have a bank account, but you are still able to pay through other stuff. And it's kind of it can be kind of problematic things, because you don't necessarily want a kid to play in a casino. That's kind of common sense, but there are sort of ways to do it, kind of based on some game elements. So there are a few things that are a little bit at the edge of what's problematic, and maybe for a lot of people it's not a problem, but for some more vulnerable, population, it might be a little bit sketchy.
And I feel like maybe for some people who are not really gaming that much or at all, like, but what is then there's some more bigger rewards in gaming? I mean, for example, one of uh, one of the games I often remember is actually um, um, what's it called again now? Suddenly it's gone now. It's like what the um what's his name now? It's like God of War,
Yeah.
Ragnarok. because of the story. I could just watch the cutout scenes, on YouTube. That's basically like one movie on its own. So that's one pleasure on its own. I feel like that game, for example, have to offer, and I also think that's why it went to win so many awards. And I don't know if you saw, but there was actually a documentary they released where they shared behind the scenes the struggle and all the challenges they actually faced, and they were saying several times, and you could kind of feel on the atmosphere as well sometimes in this Santa Monica studio where they were making this, that it wasn't really looking like that good. And if we're not really coming through with this, we're going to close. This is going to end the company. And they were having this big billboard, big screen, where they had like, I don't know, it was like a lot. It was like thousands and thousands of bugs that they had to fix before a certain date. So there was like a weird pressure, like, wow. But I feel like that do you maybe have some games in particular that's in particular touched you, or like gave you something like in that way? I feel like that some games with certain storylines and what it actually invites people into can be kind of therapeutically to some degree, because you maybe mirror yourself into that story. For example, with the God of War, when suddenly they introduced that this main character actually had a kid, that was because the main guy that was head of the story and the development of this game, he just had become a dad himself, and he wanted to change Kratos' journey into a more human, relatable version, and he knew that could potentially be maybe too big of a shift to the established fan base that already were there. I don't know if you played God of War, but like many of the previous games were kind of a bit the same. Being mad, killing another god, being even further mad, killing another god, and it just kind of continued, like a Dragon Ball kind of style. But what do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of games, and I now, especially now that I'm a game developer, I really relate to people, like the stress of launching a game. I mean, it's extremely. I mean, we had launches that were extremely stressful. Some of them were kind of okay, but usually it's very stressful. And but yeah, I think for some games, I haven't played God of War. I mean, I've played on some like friends, consoles, but I haven't really got really into the game. But it seems really cool, and I've seen that, some games, like recently I played Elden Ring, and I really kind of got into the universe and the game and stuff, and you get really, within it, and you kind of, it's sometimes it tells really a good, kind of an interesting story, or it has a universe that you really want to discover. I feel like it's sometimes overlooked as an art, but I think there is a lot of it that is kind of similar to filmmaking, or of course it depends on the type of gaming. Maybe Candy Crush is not really in that category, but it's still like there is like kind of the narration, and there's something that can be really profound in some games, and that's something definitely very interesting. But yeah, I do empathize with the like kind of the huge bug board on the launch. I mean, we've had, I think the most stressful launch we had was once. It was still during COVID. It was a few years ago. We launched a game. We did something kind of the most ambitious game that we wanted to launch at the time, and it was really very, very stressful because we are all like kind of distributed around the world, and we are trying to get a game going, and it was. It was a super, super complex game, and in the end, it was a very, very terrible launch. So I think we kind of all have a little bit of, I don't know if it's PTSD, but we have something like some memories of it that kind of linger, and for all the teams. So yeah.
How did you, what helped you in that process during the development of that game?
I mean, sometimes I think I feel like and I think it's probably the case for every job, and it's often difficult. But I think what's important is try to be like, okay, to both kind of give your best and also have a little bit of distance with what you're doing, and being like, okay, some stuff will succeed, some stuff will fail, and that's kind of fine. I mean, you cannot be all the time 100% in it, and sometimes some issues will happen, and you cannot. My logic was like that's 50, like from experience of launching a lot of different games over the years, we basically saw that you pretty much have I don't know, around 50% chance of your game to be as successful as you hope. And sometimes your game will not work, sometimes it will, sometimes it's just a bad market fit or whatever, and there are some things that you can do to make it more like to have the chances on your side, but you cannot predict everything. And it's once you kind of accept that, it's a bit easier to kind of cope with some games not being as successful or as easy to develop as you predicted, and kind of being okay with that is, I think, is quite important. It's really hard at the beginning, especially because often people really want to, a game is like, it's a creation. You spend a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of your creativity into it. And it's important to even, distance yourself a little bit from it and try to be objective and think, okay, that's fine. Maybe sometimes you have to reconsider the strategy or stuff like that.
And were there certain tools or practices that you did in order to, like you said, you keep saying like it's important to distance yourself sometimes, because I can imagine it's too much if you have to be in that space and with the potential risk that this might not be rewarded at all. How do you take care of yourself during that process?
I think it's important. Honestly, I'm not great at taking care of myself in this situation, so I don't want anyone listening to follow my advices, because it's not necessarily really great. But I think some stuff is like finding sometimes to kind of relax a little bit, like even just being like, okay, well, even though we're like running late on this game or something like that, you should still, like, it's still important to take like at least part of your weekend to just kind of do something else. Spend 1 hour during the evening to like watch a TV series or do something else that is kind of unrelated. And because when you're developing games, you don't need much except your computer usually. So you can be working 24/7 pretty much. And that's not really healthy, and sometimes that's not really productive, because you end up making mistakes. You end up, not seeing, like, missing the forest for the tree in development. And it's kind of I think it's important to figure out ways. It's like since I was a student, I also did that when I was really a bit stressed. I had exams and stuff like that. I also kind of, before an important exam, I always took the time to kind of watch an episode of a TV series or spend time to watch a movie. And for me, it was a good way to kind of relax and being like, okay, whatever, if it fails, it fails. But it's also important. When we started our studio, I think we were a little bit crazier than we are now, in the sense that we had an apartment. We were like, at the time we were in France, and we had like an apartment, and we are all developing there, and we are pretty much sleeping like most of the team was like living there in this apartment, and we are developing. So I had like basically a mattress on the ground that was kind of, and then when I got up, I just like went to the computer and just started working, and it was not a very healthy lifestyle, and we are pretty much working 24/7. Because sometimes it's easier to work on the same computer. So I was kind of doing the night shift, and later when I went to sleep, some other kind of were starting to wake up and starting to develop on that computer and to integrate different features. So it was a bit of a crazy lifestyle, and we're not really doing that kind of stuff anymore. And because we all kind of grew up, and we're trying to find something that is more sustainable.
But what was the main driven motivation then to just live like that and just keep, hustling, trying to
Yeah,
make it
but
work?
I think we were kind of all quite young. We just finished, I just finished university. I was, I wanted to do that anyway. I was, my girlfriend at the time, who's my wife now. She was like abroad. I mean, she lived in China. So anyway, I was kind of, I had a lot of time on my hands, so I could just be working all the time. And for me, it was an interesting job. So I kind of enjoyed it. But for me, it was fine to develop and do stuff with friends, and basically we were creating some cool stuff together. So for me, it was it was still a good time. But I think you cannot do that for too long. You can do it maybe for a year or two, but if you do it all your life, I think you're going to lose your hair pretty quick.
And you still have
I still have a lot.
years,
I mean, I'm probably going to lose it one time or another. So I'm enjoying it right now. I'll let it grow a bit. So because I'm not sure. I mean, if genetics is any indicator, I'm going to lose them pretty soon. So
well, let's hope it's still for a while. But when you look back on that time you just described, what would you say was like one of the main pleasures? Like you said, you actually enjoyed it at the time. And what would you maybe also describe was main pains that will eventually, as you say, if you kept doing this, it will slowly drain you more than it will
yeah,
give.
I think it's like kind of for me it was yeah, like some of the pleasure was kind of building things that were kind of working and kind of being like able to focus like almost 100% of your attention on one specific problem, and being like, okay, I have all my day, I can focus on that thing. And that was quite nice to do, because it's I enjoy kind of focusing on problems, trying to solve things. But so that was, I think that was good. But also, it's something that's good when you're at some age in your life, at some phase in your life. It works really well to be like that. But I think once you, especially once you have a family or things like that, you cannot necessarily work like this for too long. And also, even with a team, when you have a too close relationship with a colleague, so it went really well. Actually, we didn't really have too much internal issues, but I think it can be a bit unhealthy in some cases when you are like, we're pretty much living with your colleagues 24/7. It gets a bit, it can be a bit problematic.
Right. And I still wanted to actually know, because now I asked earlier, like one of the games that made a great impression on me, like God of War in particular. Were there a certain game that you, looking back on, that were like, yeah,
Yeah,
great nostalgia?
yeah. I think like I don't know if you played the Elder Scrolls, like Morrowind, especially
Oh yeah.
Oblivion. I played these. I played also Skyrim, but a bit less. But I really enjoyed those games. I did some, like, kind of the first sort of programming experience I had was to do like mods for one of those games, like for Oblivion, and I was a kid, so I didn't really do anything crazy, but yeah, that was really interesting. I really enjoyed those games. I was quite impressed by how rich was the universe of the game was, because it was kind of a, not all the story is in front of you, so you're not following a track or anything. You can do pretty much whatever you want. But wherever you go in the game, you'll see like an NPC that will tell you a story, and you'll have crazy things that you have to discover. And I'm sure I didn't discover half of what the game has to offer in hundreds of hours. So for me, it's like that's really something that impressed me, because I was like kind of discovering a universe, and it's kind of like almost like traveling in some ways, that you kind of, you're playing and you're discovering some other world. And for me, that was one. I think that was Morrowind, especially, was probably one of the games that had the most impact on me.
Mm. And I don't know when you played it at the time and which one, but like at the time when you did, was that merely to some use games to escape from their own world, and others is simply just because that the game is so captivating and enjoyable, and the story is very interesting. What was it in your case? Do
Yeah,
you remember?
I mean, I wasn't too much escaping. I think but I enjoyed it. For me, it was a good. When you're young, especially like at the time, I was a bit, I didn't have that much things to do. So for me to play a game where there is like interesting story and a lot of things to do, for me, it was really a great way to spend some time, discover things in the game. So I really enjoyed it. And yeah, I played it maybe when I was like around 13 years old or something like that, 10, 13 years old. So that was really, yeah, it was a good childhood sort of memory. And, but yeah, I kind of really, really enjoyed it as like for the story. And yeah.
Was that maybe even a determined factor for you pursuing the route of work you do now?
I think in some ways, I mean, I always enjoyed games, but somehow I didn't really want to be a game developer. I didn't think, like when I was a kid,
Really?
I really enjoyed playing games, but I thought I would do, maybe do science or do some. Later on, actually, when I was in university, I thought I would work in finance. And it turns out, I think there are a lot of people who want to do video games that end up doing finance. And I kind of wanted to work in like being a trader or something like that. And I ended up, because one of my friends like founded this kind of game studio, and I just finished university. First, I tried to find a job, but I was in China at the time, and I was trying to find a job in finance, and I couldn't speak really well Chinese, so I had basically no chance to find anything. I mean, it's not like trying to find a finance job in a communist country where you don't speak the language is not necessarily the best,
That's
the
rough.
most realistic goal. And so I ended up going back to Europe, and like my friend was like launching the startup. Actually, we kind of started developing it together when we are still in high school, and I just started doing it just for fun. I mean, I joined it. I just wanted to see what it was like, and I ended up continuing and really enjoying it and developing more and more stuff. And so in the end, I ended up in this industry, but I didn't really think that I would be developing video games for a living. For me, it was kind of it was a bit of a surprise, but in the end, it turns out really really well.
Nice. And now that you have some experience in working in that space, have you been surprised or observed something in particular there that in that space that maybe is contributing to stress, or like at least something that can be unbalanced that people should be aware of?
You mean for the users, for players?
Um, yeah, that could be, but it was also to regarding of you like working in the space. But yeah, sure, for the users as well, could be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, for the users, I didn't discover anything too problematic. I've saw that usually most people, and I was like doing also kind of specific games. We are developing specific games, so it was not maybe the whole target of the whole player base of the. So it was basically we started doing VR games, and then later on we did more like Web3 crypto games. So for us, it was our target was always a bit older. So usually people who are like maybe at least 20 years old, typically. So usually we had some people who are kind of mature and had a different way to interact with the game. So it was always really. I don't think we had anyone who had like a unhealthy kind of way to play games or that was obsessed to it too much. But we saw that there are things that are kind of that arise, and even for game developer, we saw like one thing that is quite stressful is that you like gamers, even if they don't pay for your game, even if it's kind of free or it's not expensive at all, and they play a lot and they enjoy it, they can be quite a lot of negativity. I mean, In some games, that's what you see. It especially is on some platform like Steam. People can post reviews, and they tend to be super hardcore for it. And when you're like a
Right.
gamer, you don't really notice it that much. But as a game developer, it feels sometimes it can feel quite personal, and it's hard to kind of deal with it because sometimes you feel like, you're like someone is really you have like hundreds of people criticizing your work. So some of them are really positive, but some of them will say really negative things, and they don't necessarily mean anything bad. They just didn't enjoy it or didn't like any one aspect of the game, and it's normal that it's good, I think, that people can review and give honest feedback, but sometimes that can be a quite kind of quite difficult to cope with as a game developer to see all those things. I've seen it especially. A game I mentioned before where we worked really super hard for it, and we had a crazy launch. It was on Steam. You want to kind of like basically the reviews you get will impact the algorithm of the platform. So if
Right.
people give bad reviews, your game will not perform as well. And if you get really good reviews, then it will perform better. So one thing I did was, whenever someone was posting, especially a negative review, I was on like replying to that person, try to understand. I added them and try to ask them some questions. Say, okay, maybe I can give you the game for free, and feel free to give it to a friend or whatever, or things like that. And somehow now I ended up on my Steam I'm on my Steam accounts. All my friends were basically people criticizing the game I developed before,
Wow.
and so I got like lots of those people because I added them on just to talk to them and see what were their view and trying to get their feedback. And so now it's always a bit weird because on my when I launched Steam, I see all the people who basically trashed what I did. So it's fun, but it's kind of a hard process also to kind of reply to this negative feedback. But I think it's also very useful because you learn a lot from that. And yeah.
And that's interesting. As a therapist, I cannot stop thinking about directly, like, sure. So that was an interesting approach, like how you had a challenge outside yourself, and then you tried to actually meet that challenge and communicate, interact with it. And that seemed to help, no? It was like rewarding to actually do so.
Yes, I think it's important to be like one of the chances we have like when we develop games is that often there is a clear communication channel with the people who are using it. Who are like all the players. Often they tend to connect on Discord, they are on Steam, etc. So you have a way to kind of have a discussion with them as a developer, and it can be kind of taxing also for for mental health. Sometimes it can be quite frankly quite difficult, but also I think it's very useful, and I think in a lot of companies you don't have, in a lot of industries you don't necessarily have that. You don't have that opportunity to really talk with your customers, and you don't really know what people are thinking about what you did. And so for us, it's really, it's good to have. And honestly, the fact that people tend to be quite negative, like gamers tend to be a bit negative about game developers and companies behind it, it's actually what gives you the best, often the most useful feedback. So it's not, there's a lot of positive things to get out of it, I think.
That's nice. Have you have you done that towards yourself sometimes with certain things? Like I saw this great quote earlier today. Actually, it was from another podcast, the Modern Wisdom podcast with Chris Willicks. I don't know if you know the guy, but he had the comedian Jimmy Carr on, and yeah, I can send you the episode
Okay,
afterwards
sure.
if you want. It was actually quite interesting. Of course, if you like Jimmy Carr. But there was a quote: "The answer you are looking for is in the silence you are avoiding. You need fewer inputs, not more."
Yeah, that's interesting.
Like, yeah. In what way?
Uh, I think it's like sometimes, I mean, sometimes the most the most important feedback is that, sometimes people not interacting with what you do is more telling that people having a negative opinion. I mean, like, let's say in reviews also, you have people who complain and say something like that game is really terrible, and you see that they played a lot. And that's sometimes you say, okay, that's negative, but also at the same time, that means that people found something positive. The most scary situation, honestly, is to have basically a silence and everybody's saying, okay, you did well, but really no one is playing it, or no one is really interacting with it. So yeah, I mean, I think there's some wisdom to take from that.
I thought so too, and again, particularly when it comes to ourselves, right? Because often we treat other people better than we treat ourselves. We talk more nice than our inner talk is. And I was curious, like, so you make this kind of Discord and community for your audience, your players. Do you do this as well in your team, or how do you take care of the critic, or what you might say that can be luring around?
Yes, we have also. Well, we tend to have like always a Discord, like kind of an open discussion with the public, with with the players, but also internally we try to kind of get feedback from everybody, could get some discussion channels quite open, and trying to be quite transparent between members of the team, trying to see kind of how we can improve things. And a lot of people's opinion in the team, sometimes you don't necessarily listen to what someone who's in a different who's not really working on the game is saying, but actually often it's very interesting to know what someone who's doing the marketing or doing even the admin of the company is thinking about the game itself, because it's always useful feedback, and sometimes it's a good way to not have to get some more objectivity on the work of the company.
Right. And you said it earlier, I kind of liked actually that you just said it as it was, like, you didn't necessarily feel like that you were so good at maybe taking care of yourself all the time, but it does seem like that you also have got some experience and maybe you have adjusted some things along the way. I'm curious to hear, like, are there some health secrets that you will say, like, okay, those have been pretty good, they're working for you? Are there anyone you would like to share?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was able to. I tried to balance things a little bit. It's difficult to. I feel like it's kind of sometimes developing games or developing things in general, like working really hard on some specific project. You, it's kind of a marathon. It's not really a sprint, and you have to be like, okay, well, this will last for, like, this development will take 6 months or a year. You don't want to kind of burn everything before, and also you want to keep some energy for after you release it, because it's kind of the most important part. And I think it's not true only for gaming, but for a lot of pretty much any product development. There is, like, the development phase, you often have like kind of a bit of a deadline where you want to kind of meet that deadline. But sometimes you get so exhausted that you need kind of 2 weeks to recover from it. But that's often the most important 2 weeks of the project, is like after you release it to the public and you have some feedback, you need to quickly improve things. And if at that time you're pretty basically dead, it's not going to. I
Right.
mean, you're not going to have a good time. So you have to kind of try to be like, take a step back, seeing like what's the overall process, thinking of yourself or like and other people around you as kind of like resources that have like a limited capacity, and that are not, you cannot just push things too hard, otherwise at some points it just won't work. So thinking about these things and kind of planning ahead uh, is really important, and I think that's something we learn better. I think we're better at it now. Once we do kind of release games, we're trying to do it of course it's stressful before you work a lot, but we try not to have to keep a little bit of energy for afterwards when you release. So I think that was kind of an important lesson. Another thing is also, I mean, I grew up in life. Like now, I have a daughter, so I have a family life. So of course, I cannot, I have to focus on different things. I cannot be, working 24/7. So for me, it kind of forces me to have like also a balance between private life and work. So I think it's been a good thing, and I think in the long run, it's much more healthy, and I think I'm kind of better at my work because of that.
Something in particular that you would like to give to your kids when it comes to like gaming experiences, or like in general what you have gathered so far? Are there things that you maybe think, okay, this would have been nice to have a hint up about?
Yeah, I think about game. I mean, honestly, for me, it was I had, because I think I got access to games when I was quite small, but it was like kind of Game Boy, so it was relatively simple game, maybe not as entertaining. And I was already maybe I was like, I don't know, 5 years old or something like that. So I was relatively young, but still I had kind of the process to start playing games was relatively wasn't too crazy. But I noticed with my daughter, like when she's like right now, she's like two and a half. And I tried to show her some apps, even just to learn how to count. But she got so addicted to it that, she really wanted to take my phone all the time. And it got a bit scary at some point. So I was thinking, okay, maybe I need to wait 1 or 2 years before I can let her really play games and do stuff like that. I thought, since it was educational, it was fine. But actually, I think when you're like a really, when your brain is not fully developed, you don't have like, you cannot tell yourself like, okay, I will play 1 hour, then I will do something else. So you kind of want to play as much as you can, and then you move on entirely to something else. And it's kind of there's some balance that's maybe, and I see it with like videos also, watching like, cartoons and stuff. It's a bit too intense at some ages when you're really, really small, and things need to take, a bit more time. But I feel like, gaming, honestly, from people and from all the people around me, people were like really, really into gaming. They always pretty performed well. I mean, they had normal lives and stuff, and was kind of always a healthy part of their lives for the people around me, at least. So yeah, I'd want my daughter to kind of learn, play some games and, find some fun around it. And I think I'm kind of looking forward to play with her. So that will be, I hope she will be interested in it, but yeah.
What would be the first game you would like to play with her?
That's a good question. I think probably some Nintendo games. I kind of, those games are like really nice. Like, I don't know, stuff like Mario Kart. I don't know, probably some things like that. Usually they are really fun with people, like playing with friends. And, yeah.
Nice. Is it like regarding this, because this must be a new area for you as well, especially with kids and so on, like do you talk with other people in tech, like you also work in, that maybe are in similar situation? Like, are there certain tools or books or stuff that they maybe have used that you also have heard about that you maybe can recommend?
Books and stuff, I don't really know. I mean, I haven't seen too much of it. It's more like, honestly, from more like life experience and seeing other people. But I'm sure there's lots of nice resources on it. I'm sure there's like kind of some really interesting things to kind of learn more about it. But yeah.
Because when it comes to the whole technology side of things, as a kids today kind of grew up with much more technology than we did. So getting overwhelmed will get so much easier. And it seems like, at least in my experience, that even ourselves can kind of have a challenge to actually adjust, like.
Yes, yeah. Honestly, before she was born, I didn't think it would be the case. Honestly, because for me, always like tech, all these things I just saw the positive, but now I have a little bit more reservation. I'm like, okay, well, you need to kind of control it a little bit, at least at some ages. That's not like until she grows up a little bit, but because for me it was never an issue. Maybe it was a few generations before. I think kind of maybe the thing that is the more problematic thing is probably the instant reward. I feel like and it's not just games, it's like all the apps, and especially now a lot of applications are really kind of geared towards giving it instant, feedback or instant interaction. Even like stuff like TikTok, like YouTube Shorts, etc. It's really very, you're really quickly moving on to something else. It's very stimulating. And I think it's not something that was really the case before. We didn't have that much of it.
Right.
Of course, there are lots of different ways to interact. I mean, typically things like podcasts are kind of the opposite of this, where it's like long form. You have more time to interact with kind of a slower type of media, and it's also very, very interesting. But yeah, I think for new generation, there's all these things that honestly I didn't expect it to be potentially problematic for some kids, but it turns out that it can be.
Yeah. So, in your perspective, how can we then still stay humans with all this tech being around us?
I mean, I think there's ways for it. I think real life interactions are still important. I think there's also ways to stay human on the on the internet and stuff. I feel like in many cases it's important to sometimes to remember that other people are also human. Like sometimes you don't necessarily notice when you're talking with people online. You might be like kind of shit posting, and of course it's really fun to do it. And I don't want to say that people shouldn't do that, but sometimes it's good to figure out that okay, actually the person you're talking to, it's actually a real human being, and that person also has feelings and the mind, etc. And you can actually can be a way to kind of meet other people and have like relationships and talking with other people even through all this technology. I think it can be very positive for that. But yeah, you have to keep in mind that it's not to fall too much into traps of some algorithm. Also, I don't think like on platforms like YouTube, it's really made for, or like Twitter and stuff like that. It's really made for people to kind of interact as much as possible, and sometimes you can fall in some traps for some content. So I think that there are things to kind of keep in mind to try to stay human as much as possible.
And something in particular that you maybe wish that you kind of knew when it came to this kind of things? How to take care of yourself and not get overloaded and the algorithm control.
Yeah, I think I don't really know. I've seen for me it was I kind of noticed it, so it was fine. But like you can see on like some platforms like YouTube. I mean, pretty much every platform nowadays kind of optimizes using kind of AIs and recommendation systems, and sometimes you get kind of funneled into some direction, and it's not really because of some kind of a nefarious purpose, or it's not someone is really controlling you in this direction. It's just algorithm kind of optimizing revenue. And we saw it in video games, like on platforms like Steam. They optimize they try to funnel people in some directions. And you see it maybe even more clearly on platforms like YouTube that kind of try to bring people in some directions. When not because they have like some kind of political agenda, but it's just the algorithm trying to get people to watch more content. And sometimes people kind of get lost in some traps. You kind of get into a rabbit hole, and sometimes it's fun. I mean, sometimes just you get into some random conspiracy theories, but some people get into a bit too far. And I've seen it for some friends or some people who get super worried about crime or whatever, because they just since they searched it once, it gets recommended, and then they feel like everybody's really trying to kill them or whatever, because they see all the same, in the news. They see the same news all the time because all the recommendation system know that they interact a lot with this content, and then they feel like the world is ending because they always see this kind of news, and it can be a bit. I think it's a bit scary to kind of fall in this trap. So it's something that people should stay aware of. There's kind of an algorithm trying to push you in this direction. It's not, it doesn't necessarily represent what is really happening or what the whole world is about.
And there are certain signs that you become aware of that, okay, now it's maybe time to stop, or like, how do you stop this? Because often these rabbit holes kind of slowly raveling you in, and you kind of...
Yeah, I mean, there are kind of tricks you could do. Like maybe sometimes you open like a private window on your browser, or you open it from another browser or whatever, and you'll see that, basically what you get recommended is just completely different. And what you see on your news feed is completely different. And then you feel like maybe that's kind of that's maybe a better overview of what's around. And you're not directly funneled through all the previous watch, all the history all the cookies that you have on your browser, and that funnels you towards some direction. Sometimes if you kind of restart from the ground, it gets, you're like, okay, that's maybe more representative of
Yes, you remove your cookies and
just to see what's around, or like trying to kind of figure out what's happening, just being like, okay, well, why do I get this recommended to me, and then you kind of try to think about it, then you're like, okay, then that makes sense, and keeping it in mind, I think, is important.
And there's something lately that you've been excited about when it comes to health, or maybe new habits and so on? Are there like one tool or exercise? Or
well, I do. I
apps?
think tools and exercise. I think pretty much the same. I do a little bit more. I don't really do real physical activity. Honestly, I've never been into sports at all. But I do a little bit more. I walk more, and the fact that because I have a kid, so I have to kind of you're kind of forced to do stuff and more physical activity, and I think that's quite healthy. I think it's even just very simple things. It's kind of a good way to relax.
Right.
But overall, I think I kept more as the same lifestyle. I wouldn't say it's great, honestly. I mean, I'm pretty much staying in, resting when I can, and working a lot, and just sometimes playing games. So it's not really the most healthy lifestyle, but it's I guess it's important to find ways to stop a little bit, and I'm trying to do it more and more.
Right. And maybe that's, again, I feel like that you're still a really good example, because many people, maybe, again, they don't even want to acknowledge that, it's not really an area that I look so much into, and no, I don't have the best habits, but at least like what you just said just before, well, at least you're trying, you bit by bit, and I feel like that's often that gets overlooked, We try in our fast to make it so big, and I have to make 1 hour training every day, and I have to eat like this influencer and whatever. It just becomes so much that, as I usually say to my clients, like it's like an inner courtroom, and you are fighting against your own judge, and you're trying to deliver evidence that is too much. It's unrealistic. They get overruled by the judge so fast that you're not even going to start just a little bit before it's already moved from the ground, because the judge will say immediately, where is the evidence? You haven't done any physical exercise for the last 3 months. Now you say you're going to make a marathon? Not going to happen. Dismiss the case,
Yeah.
Are you about to say something?
Yeah, no, I can definitely empathize with that. I totally, I think there's definitely some things to consider, and see yourself also as sometimes as like kind of trying to have like a third person view of yourself. I don't know, like being like you are you are kind of you know, one thing also that I did typically to motivate myself, now that I think about it, and that worked really, really pretty well, is try to gamify some tasks that I do. Like, and I've noticed that actually I was more, you know, when you kind of, because when you're trying to, basically go directly to the work and not thinking about, in terms of the big picture, sometimes you get overwhelmed or you kind of over focus on things. I've noticed that just having like sometimes kind of like sort of to-do lists and kind of gamifying a little bit and feeling like, okay, I completed all these tasks today and I'm feeling good because I completed these things. It's often quite important because it lets you sort of take a step back and just think like, okay, I'm doing it in 2 steps. First, I'm kind of thinking what I will do and what I should be doing, and I see myself kind of as a I'm trying to not like be trying not to be a superhero. Basically, like ultimately, I mean, in this company, I'm also, of course, I'm one of the managers or like the founders of the company, but I'm also one of the employees, and I'm trying to see myself also as an employee who has limited time and capacities and stuff. And I try to organize that work for myself and in a way that can be sort of done. And I've noticed that also these things help me a lot, especially to study, because I always wanted to kind of learn new things. And if I just try to follow a course, it was difficult for me. But if I kind of answered all these tasks in even in some board, in some doc or Google Doc or whatever, and having a way to sort of being happy with myself because I completed a few things, it made me feel like I was progressing towards some goal. And usually it helped me in some ways also relax because I was thinking, okay, I'm already doing something productive. It's I think it's important to
Yeah,
have.
it's a good point. And that's actually another way to actually use this dopamine rush that many of these social media and so on trying to play on us. That with regard to your to-do list you just mentioned, your brain will actually reward you differently if you, let's say, you make a list of 20 things that you think that you would like to do today, but you only managed to finish 19 of them. Your brain wouldn't actually reward you fully because you didn't complete it, the entire list. So what you can do instead is simply to make the list shorter. So if it's only 5 things, the list is completed, and that triggers the brain in a different way. So that's a different way to try to adjust it and play around with it in order, as you say, to gamify it. You wanted to also to maybe show the game with Ton, but before
Yes,
we do,
sure,
I have a short exercise I would like to share with you.
of course.
Because as you said, like, okay, maybe you're not doing so much of that and it's easy to forget about it. And some of the work that I do with people is simply trying to implement short but very capable exercises for people to maybe feel like, oh, okay, especially when you sit in the office, your shoulder and neck, maybe often it's a little bit sore or a little bit irritated. That's usually signals that your body actually wants to move or like is complaining about being still for so long. So one exercise I would like to share with you, if you first try to sit and relax and sense your shoulder and neck, the state of that, just to register, okay, how it is without any judgment. It's like a 3 minutes exercise. It's very short, and what you start to do, we're going to focus on the shoulder and the neck.
Yeah.
So while using your breathing, just normally without forcing it or anything, when you breathe out, then on the next breath in, you start to move your shoulder slowly upwards towards your ear hole, and only up as long as you feel like that this is still comfortable. Some people have so much tension that it's starting to hurt at a certain point, then you just stop just before that. Then you hold that position. On the next breath out, you're sensing it because you're supposed to still be able to breathe normally while holding this. Then on the next breath in, you start to move your shoulder backwards. Again, slowly, and only so far back that you feel like this is fine. Again, breathe out. Still holding the position. And then on the next breath in, you then focus on that now the shoulders, on your breath out, you're going to slowly pull it down, not forward, but simply down, and then slowly sense your shoulders position, and maybe try to register if there's any changes regarding before you noticed your posture to now.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was good. It feels actually pretty.
Because this is a very simple but very, rewarding exercise that can be done shortly but effectively to actually release some of the tension. If you have in your mind that you at least hold it for about 5 seconds, because that's enough time for the tension in the muscles to, when you finally relax, your relaxation, the tension from the muscle will have better opportunity to release.
Okay, well.
And then, of course, drink some water afterwards. Yeah, it was just a little exercise I
That's
wanted
cool.
to share
That's good. I mean,
go to the game.
I've always had like pretty bad posture, and since I'm sitting all day, it's good to do this kind of exercise. It's good to know.
Yeah, I hope it can be useful. Yeah. All right, but you mentioned that we could also try to see the game.
Sure.
Even though it's also a podcast, but this is both on YouTube and on podcast, so I think it's going to be fine.
Yeah. Let me get my computer slightly closer. So maybe I can show you a little bit what we're doing. I don't know if I do like a live demo.
Sure.
You know,
if you still have time.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Let me show you guys. So basically, kind of the goal of Town Battleground, I'll just mute the sounds from it so it doesn't distract too much.
Sure.
There we go. Okay, that should be fine. So let me share my screen.
Cool.
There we go. So you should be able to see it. So basically, it's launched directly in from within Telegram. So this is the game. It's basically downloaded right away. So it takes just a few seconds to launch. So here I'm already in the game. So basically, all the game was downloaded right now. So if you haven't ever played it, you can just look for it on Telegram, and you'll find, like, if you look for Town Battleground, basically you'll be able to kind of join the game in just a few seconds. And so for us, that was kind of one of the main challenges, is to have like a game that's really kind of a full game where you have like lots of different assets, like, you know, items like weapons and stuff that are all kind of unique, and have a game that can be launched in just a few seconds. And so basically the kind of the game mode that it is like it's kind of a battle royale. I mean, there's also like right now I'm going to play just the deathmatch, and it's fully online. So I'm playing with lots of people. We did some sort of tournament with different nations that were kind of competing against each other. And so right now, I mean, it just finished a couple of days ago, but we always do kind of like different tournaments. You know, right now I'm playing with like different players. I'm actually, I mean, people always think that because I'm a game developer, I'm actually good at playing games, but it's absolutely not true. I'm absolutely terrible. I really enjoy playing video games, but I'm pretty much bad at every single game I play. But
what do you enjoy about gaming then?
I mean, I don't like. For me, it's still enjoyable, even if I'm not really good at it. I kind of, you know, having a little challenge, and even if I'm not like succeeding, it's to me it can still be fun. The interaction with other people,
Right.
it's to me it's still relaxing, even though I'm not trying to really compete like crazy or do esports. But sometimes you get a little win, like just right now, and you kind of
Yeah.
enjoy the moment. And I'm so yeah, basically like it's kind of a game. It's quite fun because it's online. You can easily play, with your friends. You just share a link.
Hmm.
It doesn't it's really really kind of simple to play, but there is a good, all this can be played on mobile, on PC, and on pretty much any device. And so for us, that was kind of a cool. That was really interesting to do games that can be launched so easily. Like it's just from Telegram. So yeah, right now we're having quite a lot of people already playing it. So that's really cool. I think in
Hmm.
the like I would stop sharing, but like in especially in Web3 gaming, often there is it's hard to find players because people are not necessarily hardcore gamers. They don't necessarily have a gaming PC, etc.
Right.
And so on Telegram, that was really a cool way for us to bring more people and have a game that can be launched, instantly, and then really, and that is really fun to play.
And do you see something in the future, like in the Web3, when it comes to this, that could be interesting to share? Like any thoughts or
Yes. I mean,
visions?
I think that especially, Web3 gaming had some difficulties. I think in the kind of, recently, like even from the beginning, like usually it's to kind of transfer to to get a lot of players in a Web3 game is really difficult because there's a lot of barriers of entry. It always gets complex. You have the wallet situation. You have like, installing it on the platform. With Telegram and Ton, I think you have you kind of remove all these steps to access the game. And even if you
Right.
don't have a wallet, as long as you have Telegram, you can launch the game. We're actually making it possible for people to launch the game outside of Telegram in the future. So for us, that's kind of a good, we want to like kind of target as many people as we can, so they can play the game really easily and they don't have to install anything, and they can really share it with their friends, play it together. And for us, that's kind of the goal.
You feel like that's part of the future? Like I remember Google tried to do this as well, where everything was like streamed without downloading the games.
Yes, I think it's part of it, but right now, actually, in Town Battleground, like you kind of download the full game as you are loading it. So the full game is really, really small. It's like 50 megabytes, including the map and
Hmm,
everything. So
I see.
so you launch it. It's basically the size of a very short video,
Hmm.
and for us, and you have everything, and so you don't have any latency. And I think that's kind of a big part of the future. I feel like so far games have tended to become larger and larger. Like sometimes you download a game on your computer, it's like 100 gigabytes,
Yeah.
and so it's kind of crazy. So like for us, it's like, yeah, 2 or 3 thousand times smaller than that, and we can still have most of the gameplay. So we're trying to kind of reduce it, and it was one of the main technical challenge actually to create that game, is to have a game that kind of fits on such a limited platform. And but yeah, I do think it's going to be a big part of the future. I feel like streaming also has a big potential. Google tried to do it. It's still working. I mean, some people are using some of those systems, but I think it didn't take off as much as was expected, because you have some issues with latency. And usually when people
Yeah.
you need a really good connection, and once you have a really good connection, usually you have a good device. So it didn't really, it was not necessarily a great match for everybody. And
Yeah, it didn't really took off. It was a Google Stage, yeah, something it
yes,
was called.
Stadia, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. But yeah, it's an interesting idea. Like you simply just try to make it more accessible and trying to remove some of the barriers, so it's more easy for people to actually try it out and so on. And I only feel like, again, I'm a therapist. I'm thinking like this as well. So back to the courtroom, like it's about, again, the same with ourselves. How can we create evidence and remove the barriers so it becomes more plausible for our own minds to get convinced that, okay, if it's only just that, well, I mean, yes, you have done it before in other areas, so yeah, I guess it's possible that you can do it also if you want to do this. You do have the skill, you have used it here, so maybe you can also use it in this area of your life. Yeah, okay, like it's a little bit similar. Because I see it many times that very often we overthink these things, and then when we finally do it, we finally start it. It's like the Mark Twain quote, He got asked at some point, I think, Mr. Twain, have you ever had a lot of problems in your life? Millions. And most of them didn't even came true.
Yeah.
Because most of it is up here.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's it's a very good quote.
Yeah, I kind of liked it, yeah. Are there anything you wanted to ask or say that we maybe haven't covered?
Well, I don't really know. I think we covered quite a few things, and I think was really a lot of fun to do, and it's interesting. I mean, honestly, I probably I think like a lot of people, like pretty much everybody needs some therapy. I didn't really do it much in my life, but I think a lot of people benefit from it. So thinking at least about it is really interesting to kind of take some time, a step back and think about mental health. I think it's really important, and I've seen it, in the crypto world also, because like we've seen some crazy stuff. I mean, maybe there's like a few like a kind of a sort of fun story about this. Like what brought us to crypto? Like before we were like developing VR games, and then we started working for a Web3 gaming company. They launched the token, and they basically they needed someone to develop their game, and so we kind of started like this. And I remember at some point their token went from market cap of like 10 million to something that was completely crazy. It went to like 600 million of like FDV, and it went just because of some hype that came to it and stuff. And I remember seeing the founders of it coming to the office like with like at like 3 in the afternoon with like sunglasses, and they were completely destroyed. And I think that in crypto there is like it's especially important to think about your mental health, even if you're like, whether you're a user, like whether you're an investor or a user or project creator. I think it's there's a lot to be focused on, let's say.
There really are. And there are really not that many that focus on this, so that's also why I kind of feel like obligated that somebody needs to. So
yeah,
yeah. And that's why I do mainly like, because I was thinking the same, and that's also why I feel like this conversation kind of also gives some other aspects of like what can also be kind of therapeutically and still have some value. I mean, clearly you're doing your own thing, right? You're still trying to manage and trying to take care of yourself and so on. So there's many ways to do it. And I feel like gaming can definitely be one way, an element in that process as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any apps or anything in particular you would like to recommend that you feel like this is a really great tool for me, so maybe it can be for others as well?
Yeah, I mean, for stuff stuff for relaxing and things, I don't really know if there's like, for me, I don't really have any really specific tools for that. I just for like kind of to-do list and things like that to organize my time, I just use like really regular notepads and stuff like that. It's pretty much very, very basic.
Nice.
And
keep it old school.
Yeah, keeping it old school. I mean, sometimes we use like stuff like Notion or Trello for organizing tasks, and I kind of sometimes use it for myself, even just for stupid stuff like paying taxes and stuff, because it just helps me not feel just overwhelmed by some stressful thing, but just being like, okay, it's not that scary, I'll just separate it in small tasks, and sometimes that's something that helps me a bit, and you know.
That's a good point. But I feel like again that comes tied back to that point about making things more actionable.
Yeah.
The smaller the steps, the easier it's like, oh, if it's just that, or I guess I could do that. Yeah, I can see that process, how I can do that. Okay.
Yeah, and I've noticed also in like kind of it's also important in like managing people when you have a team is to kind of trying to have goals that are kind of objective and being like, okay, that's something that can be completed. The goal shouldn't be like, if you make a to-do list and one of the goals is make the game better or be successful or whatever, that's just you're not going to necessarily achieve it, and there's no clear path to achieve it. Sometimes if you just make it into some actionable steps, you reduce the stress of everybody, and you're making it more actionable and more objective, and then you can figure out, okay, how do we make it successful? And then there's kind of in two phases. You first off you plan it, and then you try to execute it, and that's kind of the way I try to also work myself, is to, or even do kind of daily tasks, is to kind of trying to separate a little bit the execution and the thinking, because otherwise it gets really, really stressful. You get overwhelmed by tasks.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you have a question for the next guest?
For the next guest, that's a good question. Do you know already who's going to be the next guest?
Well, I do actually have. I think maybe he's going to be the next one after this, because I have a few actually. But one of them is Aston Berger. He was also at the NFC.
Cool.
From Unchained.org.
Yeah.
So yeah, that could be one. Or I actually have a future researcher from Denmark. It's kind of interesting as well. She's studying future trends, and then they give like some ideas. They actually have been able to foretell certain things that happened, for example, Brexit and so on. And yeah.
Super interesting.
So it's either one of those is going to be the next.
Nice.
But just any questions you think in general that maybe could be interesting regarding health, or like something that we maybe didn't cover that you feel like that could be interesting, or
maybe some kind of how to stay sane with the ups and downs of the market, whether it's Web3 or even the economy or whatever. How to how to keep a balance, and how to not go crazy.
Yeah. That's a good point.
One direction or the other, that's
Okay. I'll bring it forward. If people want to reach out to you and interact with you, are you open to that?
Yes, of course. Probably the best, I guess, is on LinkedIn. If people want to talk to me, I guess that's where I'm the most likely to reply. If they want to sell me like development services and stuff, I just tell them I'm not interested. Please don't need to contact me. I've already like 5 messages every day for that. But if it's something like interesting, I'd be happy to answer and to discuss it. And if people have some ideas or whatever, I'm always open for discussion.
Cool. Well, thank you for being my guest, Benjamin.
Thank you so much.
And see you around.
Thank you. It was a good time. Thanks.
You too.
Sure.
Take care.
Joyful Danish. Stay human. Is it even still possible to stay human? Maybe it's not too late.